on our Hangout as we talk about filing your U.S. tax return as an international student inside the U.S. I'm Brianna Davis with internationalstudent.com, and I'm joined today by Jennifer Frankel, also from internationalstudent.com. And in the end of this Hangout, like always, we're going to answer some of your questions that you've sent in. Jennifer will be answering those questions for you. So please take advantage of the Q&A feature inside this Hangout, and then hopefully we can address any concerns or questions that you have later on. Now, today we're going to be discussing sort of the basics whenever it comes to filing your U.S. tax return. So if you're just getting started, or maybe you haven't got started at all, this is going to be a really great Hangout for you. It's going to really develop those building blocks on what you need to know. Now, if you have already started and you have a really specific question to your situation, keep in mind that neither Jennifer nor myself are accountants, so we won't be able to answer a question regarding your specific situation. You'll have to contact an accountant for that, but whenever it comes to what forms you need to file, how to actually get those in, and then also if you need additional help, this is the perfect place. This is where you need to be. So with that being said, along with the Q&A feature, we also have a really cool feature in our Hangout if you have not used it before. It's called the Showcase feature, and there we have a couple of links where you can check those out. Make sure you pull those up, bookmark them for later so that you can go back after this Hangout and watch and visit those and get more information on taxes. So, okay, let's go ahead and we will get started. So hopefully by now you do know that as an international student, you have to file your U.S. tax return, you and your dependents, if you are here inside the U.S. during the previous year. So we're going to address that today, and if you did not know this as well, you have a deadline that's coming up pretty quickly here. You have April 15th as your deadline, so you'll want to get the ball rolling on that, get as much information as possible, and get started. So as an international student, first of all, you're going to fall into one of two categories. You're either going to be a non-resident alien or you're going to be a resident alien for tax purposes. Now, you're like, well, how do I know which one I fall into? There's a pretty simple way that you can tell. First of all, if you are an international student on an F, a J, an M, or a Q visa, and you've been inside the U.S. for less than 5 calendar years, then you're going to be considered a non-resident alien. Now, if you are on an F, a J, an M, or a Q visa as an international student, and you've been inside the U.S. for more than 5 calendar years, then you're going to be considered a resident alien. So that's something key that you need to know, because that's going to help determine where you go from there, how you get started. So today we're going to specifically be talking to non-resident aliens. All right? So as a non-resident alien, what kind of forms do you need to fill out? So first and foremost, every non-resident alien must file a Form 8843. Now this is in regards to yourself, and then also if you have any dependents. So if you have a spouse, if you have children, each and every one of you will have to file, you'll have to fill out this form, and you're actually going to have to send this in your very own envelope. Now here you can see we have the form pulled up for you. So you can see it's actually a pretty simple form. It's pretty basic. You're going to just fill out that top portion there on the left-hand side. You'll fill that out. If you're a student, you'll jump down to Part 3. You'll fill that out. And as you can see by those questions, they're just very general questions about you and your situations. You should be able to complete that, no problem. And then on that second page, so the page that you see on the right, you'll just have to put your signature in there. And it's a pretty straightforward, simple form. So I highly recommend, if you're wanting to recruit outside help, I highly recommend trying to complete this form yourself, because as you can see, it's a pretty simple document. I have great faith that most of you will be able to complete this, no problem. Okay, so that's first of all what you must complete if you are a non-resident alien, each and every one of you. Now, if you received income during the previous year, then there's another form that you must fill out, and that's going to be the 1040-NR, or hopefully the 1040-NR-EZ. Now, most of you will be able to complete the 1040-NR-EZ, and it's just as it sounds. It's going to be the easy version of the 1040-NR. So now there's going to be a few items, there's a few checklist items that you want to make sure that you do adhere to. So you must meet all of these items we have pulled up on the screen in order to confirm that you can actually indeed complete the 1040 NREZ as opposed to the 1040 NR. But generally speaking, most of you are going to be able to do the easier version. You know, as long as you're not claiming a dependent, or if you didn't make over 100,000 in income last year, then you're going to be more than likely able to complete the 1040 NREZ. But just in case, you can check out this list of 11 items and confirm that. But most of you, no problem, you'll be able to complete this, this easy version. And it's going to be a difference of just 2 pages versus 5. So if you're able to complete this easier version, I highly recommend that you do so. All right. Now, in order to complete the form, keep in mind that you are going to need your W-2. So if your employer has not yet sent this to you, or maybe you lost it, make sure that you contact your employer and get your W-2. That way you can complete this form. Okay, now just a reminder, both of these forms, they are speaking directly to non-resident aliens. So if you're a resident alien, these forms are not the forms that you need to complete. You're going to have to look beyond this hangout to get assistance as to what forms you actually do need to fill out. Okay, so once you have your forms done, where do you go from there? Now, unfortunately, as an international student, as a non-resident alien, you are not going to be able to e-file. So you won't be able to send in your documents electronically. So what you're going to have to do is print these documents out and then actually physically mail them in. Now, on internationalstudent.com, we have a couple of different addresses, so you can go there. We'll give you that link here. You can go there and see exactly what address you need to mail it into. The address will vary depending on what you're sending in. For example, if you're sending in a payment with your documents or not. So we do have a list of the different scenarios and which address you need to send it into. You can get it right there to see where you actually need to send it into. Okay, so now that you know what forms that you will have to fill out, now you know hopefully where to go to see where you need to send it to. If you begin to get into the process filling out these forms and you're like, oh man, this is just way over my head, I don't know what to do from here, that hangout was just not enough, I need more hands-on help, then there's a few other places that you can go. I know you're on a student budget, probably a pretty tight budget, so first you're of course going to want to check out the free resources. Once again, we'll give you that link to internationalstudent.com. We have a whole tax section devoted to you as an international student. So you'll want to take advantage of that, check that out. Beyond that, you of course will want to utilize your campus. Contact your international student advisor and see what free resources you have on campus. A lot of times campuses will have discounted or maybe even free help so that you can get that going and be able to meet that deadline and get your tax return in correctly. So check out your campus as well. Also, surprisingly, the IRS has a toll-free hotline number that you can call, and they'll help you with any questions you have. So that's going to be a really great resource going directly to the source. Just keep in mind that whenever you call them, you are more than likely going to have a little bit of a wait time because you'll have a lot of other individuals who have questions as well. Now, if those 3 items just don't seem to be enough, you need a little bit more. What you can do is you can also check out a service program and see if that might be able to help. A few good options include Glacier, WinStar, and SprintTax. SprintTax you can get to directly from that link on International Student that we have there for you. So you'll want to check out those different services and compare what they can do for you, the pricing, and see if that might be a good option if you're not able to complete those forms yourself. Now, if all of these just still don't seem to be enough, then you still have another option, and that's to hire a CPA. Now, keep in mind that hiring a CPA, it's a great option, but it is going to be the most expensive. So you should only use that as a last resort if you really can't do all of this yourself. Okay? So hopefully this information has helped guide you a little bit as to where to get started, what forms to fill out, where to send them, and then where to get extra help if needed. Now, hopefully a lot of you have sent in your questions that you have, and I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Jennifer Frankel, and she will answer those for you.
Hi, and good morning, and thanks for joining us. I'm going to answer some of the questions that have come in throughout the Hangout. Again, as Brianna had mentioned, we are not accountants, but we're happy to give you general advice on your taxes. So the first question we have is, hi, thanks for this broadcast. Will this information help even students who are on OPT now and applying for an H-1B visa this April? Yes, typically someone who's on an OPT going to an H-1B status, they're going to be transitioning from non-resident alien status to resident alien status. Because of this, you're going to need to get some additional advice from an advisor or from a tax expert as to when you're going to be transitioning from a non-resident status to a resident status and determine how that's going to impact this year's returns that you file. The next question we have, I have lived in 2 different states, Maryland and DC, and worked 2 different jobs during the year 2014. What forms should I fill out for state taxes? I am a non-resident alien. Good question. Today's Google Hangout is specifically addressing those issues dealing with federal taxes. Most states do have their own tax regulations and tax filings, so it's important that you contact them directly to see what you need to do in each state. Likely, you're going to need to file in each state, both DC and Maryland, so we recommend you getting advice directly from a tax expert or a CPA, for example, to determine that. We have another question coming in. Okay. What happens if you didn't file taxes on past years? It's very, very important that as an international student or international scholar that you fill out taxes every year. You need to fill out, at least if you do not have income on a regular basis in that particular year, then you would need to fill out Form A843. However, if you did not file taxes, make sure that you do that this year. It's very, very important. Okay, let's see what other questions we have here. Okay, we have another question coming in. I didn't receive W-2, but 1098-T and 1099 miscellaneous. What form should I fill out? What form should I fill out? I am a non-resident alien. Okay, as a non-resident alien, first you're going to need to fill out Form 8843. Then you're either going to need to fill out the 1040NR or the 1040NREZ. The difference, again, between those 2 forms, there's a number of differences that you can find on the IRS website, but for most, that means that you make less than $100,000 in income, you don't have any dependents that you're claiming, and that you do not own a house. If that's the case, then you are welcome to fill out the 1040NREZ. That's the simplest one. Okay, let's see. I am on an F1 visa in Georgia State. I've never worked in the U.S., and so I do not have a Social Security number. I will be doing an internship in summer in Texas, Austin. What steps do I have to do to ensure that my taxes are filed? As I mentioned, every international student will need to fill out Form 8843. So be sure that you complete that form. And the tax year basically applies to last year's tax filing. So if you are filing your taxes in this year, it's going to apply to any sort of income in the previous year, so in 2014. So if you're just now starting your internship and you haven't received any money last year, then you do not need to worry about filing the form the 1040NR or the 1040NREZ, because as long as you haven't received any income in the last year. Okay, we have another question here. Some of my friends of F1, less than 5 years, have files through as RA and have got their refunds. Does it matter if you're an RA or an NRA? Okay, so when you're talking about less than 5 years, again, we're talking about the residency status and the non-residency status for tax purposes. And if you are talking about getting refunds, then we're also talking about income in the previous year. So we're talking about whether or not you whether you received money. So whether you an RA or an NRA, that shouldn't have any impact. It's based on, again, whether you are receiving income. And every time you do take income, then it's going to be, depending on what your relationship is with your employer, it's going to be based on what you've already paid. So when you're filing your taxes, essentially you're saying, you know, here is what I paid, and either this is how much I owe, and you'll pay that when you do your taxes, or if you don't owe any money, perhaps you've overpaid, then you'll get a refund. So that's what we're talking about. But depending on whether you're resident or non-resident alien, both situations, you can get a refund. So that does not make a difference as to whether or not you're eligible. Okay, we have another question. Do I need to mention my tuition fees amount for 2014? In other words, do the tuition fees affect the tax refund amount? And the answer to that is no. Your tuition, the amount that you pay, does not have any effect on what your taxes are. Taxes are essentially how much income you are receiving, if any. Most international students aren't receiving income, and so that's not, it does not factor in, and you just have to fill out the form 8843. If you are receiving income, then at that point you may need to file additional forms. The impact could be in terms of income. There are a number of factors of what income could be. It can be wages, it could be if you got a scholarship, for example, but those are all things to take into consideration as you determine what documents you need to file for the IRS. We have another question. I use TurboTax and they file the tax refunds. So since it's online, will it be returned? And will I have to do the mail version? Unfortunately, international students and non-resident aliens that are under the exemption cannot file online. So what we suggest is that you do fill out the forms, you print it out, and that you also mail it. Keep in mind that there are some programs that are not designed for non-resident aliens. So be sure to take a look and review all the information that was submitted, and that you do send in the paper copy and that you send in the correct copies of the documents that you need to submit. There are some really good software out there. If you do prefer to use software, there are programs such as Glacier, Sprint Tax, and other ones out there as well. You can also contact a CPA if you do need more help. Okay, we have another one. How do I know if I'm a resident or a non-resident alien? Great question, and that's really what this presentation is about. Resident versus non-resident alien is going to be based on the type of visa you have and the length of time you spent in the U.S. If you have a J, F, Q, or M visa and you are an international student, then if you are in the U.S. for less than 5 calendar years, then you'd be considered a non-resident alien for tax purpose. We can feel very confident about that. If you are a scholar, let's say, or you're on another J visa that is a non-student category, then that's really just going to depend on, again, how long you've been in the U.S. If it's less than 2 calendar years, then you can feel confident that you're a non-resident alien. Now after that, it does get more complicated. You may still be exempt, other exemptions like the closer connection exemption, and then what happens is there's another test called the substantial presence test, which will look at how long you've been in the U.S. At that point, again, it gets tricky, so we do recommend that you contact a professional or you use one of the softwares to help navigate what your tax resident status is. Okay. We do have another question here. I am an international student on a J1 visa and a resident of Florida for tuition purposes. Will I be considered a resident alien if I start a job before the end of the academic year, still a Florida resident? Okay, so if you're on a J1 visa and you are a resident of Florida, that it can be tricky. If you're on a J1 for on a student category, if you are an international student on a J visa, then it's going to be the first 5 calendar years in the U.S. that you'd be considered a non-resident alien. If you're on a, let's say you're a scholar, for example, then it's 2 calendar years. After that, again, it's just going to depend on your situation, so we recommend that you do get expert advice that's personal to your situation, so that way you can determine whether you are a resident alien or a non-resident alien for tax purposes. Okay, we have another question here. I am a J2 visa, so I'm a non-resident. So all what I need to fill out is 8843 form and mail it to the required address. Great question again, and we haven't directly addressed this, but yes, if you are on a J2 visa, you, just like your J1 visa holder, they will, and you will, need to fill out the tax forms. Every individual and their dependents will need to file separately. That's really important, which means that you need to fill out form 8843, and then you will also need to submit that in a separate envelope to those addresses that appear on internationalstudent.com in the tax section. Now, whether you need to do additional paperwork, again, that's going to depend. The form 8843 is if you are a non-resident alien. So if you have been in the U.S. for less than 2 or 5 calendar years, again, depending on whether the dependent is a student or a non-student category, and whether or not you've received any income. So if you haven't received any income, then that's correct. You would just need to fill out form 8843. Many times your schools have experts in this, so you may want to contact your advisor directly about your particular situation, and they can give you further advice that's more geared to your particular situation. Okay, we have another question here. Hi, I currently work as a math tutor. My school deducts tax from my payments. Okay. Whether or not your employer, in this case your school, does pay you as an employee, so does deduct taxes, you're still going to have to file your taxes, okay? Every international student and scholar will need to file their taxes every year, regardless of whether you pay taxes out of your salary or your wages that you receive on a regular basis. Now, you will need to fill out, if you're a non-resident alien, that form 8843, and if you have received funding, such as in your situation as a math tutor, then you will also need to fill out additional forms. Now, I can't speak to your particular situation because it will depend, but again, schools often have experts in this, and they may be able to further direct you in your particular situation. All right, we have another question here. What should you do if you have already applied as a resident alien and the file was accepted? This is for a non-resident alien applicant. Okay, so when it comes to this, if you are a resident alien or you're changing to a resident alien, this can be quite complicated, and it really just depends on when you're making that transition from a non-resident alien to a resident alien. So what I would recommend doing in your particular situation is getting more advice on that particular issue. Now, if you are a non-resident alien and you are receiving funds, you can fill out the 1040NR or the 1040NREZ. But again, we don't know. It depends on the situation. So you may want to call the IRS at the number that Brianna had given you previously and ask about your particular situation as well. Okay, we have another question here. I am a F1 student, and I've been on a fellowship since last August. It technically isn't counted as employment, and no tax was withheld from it. What forms will I need to fill out? Okay. So there are different ways that you can be employed. You can be employed as an employee or an independent contractor, and there's a lot of other different relationships that you can have with your employer. So because of that, if you're, first of all, on an F1 student visa, you're in the U.S. for less than 5 calendar years, we know by now that we need to fill out that form 8843, so make sure to fill that out. Now, because you did get funds you did not have the taxes withheld, you may need to actually pay different payment to the IRS, but we don't know your particular situation. So again, call the IRS, or you can contact your school for additional information, because again, we are giving general advice, and we want to be able to give you as much information as we can, but there's a lot that goes into it, and it can be quite complicated. Okay, now we've got another question here. Hi, I'm not working, but I can apply Form 8843, and my question is, where do I get the form? That's a great question. And you know what? That is really the case with most international students. If you are on an F1, you're here for less than 5 calendar years, and you're not employed, you're not making any money here in the U.S., then all you do need to fill out is that Form 8843. You can get that form off of our website. So if you go to internationalstudent.com on the tax section, then you can go down, there's an actual link to that form. Just go ahead, print that off, and you can just fill it out and mail it in. We also have the addresses on there, and don't forget to have it postmarked before the deadline of April 15th. Okay. We have another question here. Hi, I was on OPT from July 2013 to July 2014. I was working until May 2014, and now I'm back in my home country. How do I file taxes in this case? Can I receive a W-2 form to my European address? And can I get an extension to send the forms after April 15th? Okay, good question. So if you are if you were on an OPT and you were, again, a non-resident alien, you're filing taxes in 2013, again, what we're looking at is for this year's tax filing, 2014. So we're talking about January 1 of 2014 to December 31st of 2014. So if you're looking back at 2013, that'll overlap a bit, and it will also depend on what your status is after that time. I would recommend contacting the IRS because it does sound like your taxes may be a little bit more complicated. In terms of the W-2 forms, you can get that document. You do need to contact your employer directly, and they can send you a copy of it, and that way you can get the information off that. The other point you brought up about extensions, yes, you can have an extension. Again, for most international students, we don't recommend it because it's pretty straightforward and you can fill it out. But if you do want an extension, you can file for an extension as well. Okay, we do have another question here. Hi, thanks for this. It's a lot of help. So what happened if I've already filled mine and mailed it in and didn't fill out Form 8843? Should I redo it, or is it over? Thank you. It is not over. The good news is that we're having this hangout early, so that way you can get all the forms in on time. So if you haven't done that yet, go ahead and fill out Form 8843. If you filled out other forms, I would suggest including that in that submission, so that way everything's together and it's not all over the place. The other thing to keep in mind, too, is whenever you're filing your documents with the IRS, keep copies. It is possible that they can come back to you and have questions, so you want to have all the documents that you submit available, so you can have it to refer back to if you need to. Okay. Let's see. We've got another question here. I am working in the U.S. and studying as well. Can you suggest any good portals, such as TurboTax, I can use to file my taxes? Yes, we can certainly do that. Again, depending on the complexity of your taxes, we recommend contacting your school or even calling the IRS, because those are free services that are available, and they have a lot of experience dealing with international students, or they're from the source itself. If you do want additional help, we recommend either Glacier. They have a great reputation, and they are used to working with international students. And then we also have a partner, Sprint Tax, and they can also help you file your taxes as well. Okay. I have another question here. This is a weird question, but how much do we get if we apply Form 8843? Good question. And really, Form 8843 will not get you a refund. Refunds are only available if you are working and you get an income here in the U.S. And let's say you've paid taxes, but you've overpaid. So you get a refund for the amount that you've overpaid the IRS. Now, if you haven't received any income, for example, then you will not get a tax refund, but you should still fill out Form 8843. If you have received income, most international students will need to fill out the 1040 NR, the 1040 NREZ, just depending on your situation again. And in that case, if you have overpaid your taxes, then you go ahead and submit that and you would get a refund. Okay, let's see. We've got another question as well. I worked as an intern and then shifted to a full-time employee, but I'm still on my F1. Should I have 2 W-2 forms or 1, as it is the same company? Is there anything special that I need to do in this situation? Okay, so when you're submitting your taxes to the IRS, they are looking at the amount that you paid and the amount that you should have paid, not necessarily on your status, whether you're full-time or intern, because that's really just going to depend. So if you're on an F1 visa, again, as a non-resident alien, so in the U.S. for less than 5 calendar years, then you will need to fill out Form 8843, as we talked about. And the W-2 form does come from your employer. So just because you change the number of hours that you spend at work, that's not going to make it a special situation. You're still only going to get 1 W-2 form, okay? So if you've already got one, then you're ready to go. You can use that to file your taxes because there is nothing special. You should get W-2s for each employer that you're working for, okay? So in this case, you just get 1. Okay. It looks like those are all of our questions. If you have additional questions, please go ahead and send them in. We'll be answering them offline here. But I appreciate you tuning in, and thanks so much for all of your questions. We're happy to help, and just make sure that you get your taxes in before April 15th, the deadline. And I'm going to turn it back over to Brianna, who's going to close it out.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. Hopefully all of these answers to your questions have helped you a little bit today. Now just one more time, we're going to show you the 2 links that you can visit on internationalstudent.com where you can get a bit more information on everything that we've talked about today, plus more. So go ahead, take a second, jot those down. Or those are also, once again, in the showcase. So find the showcase in this Hangout and open up those links, and then you can check those out afterwards. So there they are. I'll give you one more second here. All right. So thank you all so much for attending today. Hopefully you can catch our next Hangouts. Until then, have an excellent day.